Hi everybody, it's time for the exciting conclusion of Excalibur by Hudson Talbott. Last time we left King Arthur and his rival and Arthur had a broken sword. Let's see if he survives. I don't know, that this knight is pretty strong. "Now, sire, yield to me or ye shall die," said Pellinore, gasping for breath. He pulled out his dagger and pressed it against Arthur's throat. "As for death, I welcome it if it's my time," said Arthur. "I yield only to God, sire." "Then so be it," said Pellinore, pressing forward. Suddenly, the dragon fell away from Arthur's throat. He looked up to see the gigantic knight falling backwards to lie motionless. Merlin stepped out of the bushes. "What have you done?" moaned Arthur. "You killed this great knight with your tricks when I couldn't beat him fairly. Let me die! Let me die!" "He's only asleep," said Merlin. "I had to do something. But you will die if you do not tend your wounds immediately." But Arthur was already unconscious. Merlin brought him to the forest dwelling of a hermit who knew the healing arts. After treating the king's wounds, the two old men sat down to pray and wait. Fever drove Arthur into the nightmarish realm between life and death. The old men tended his wounds, but Arthur alone had to face the fiery visions burning in his mind. For 3 days and nights he writhed in agony. Finally, Arthur's fever broke and his strength slowly returned, but he seemed sad and distant. After days of riding in silence, Merlin asked Arthur why he remained so troubled. The youth was slow to respond. "Because I've let you down," he said at last. "I wanted you to be proud of me. But who am I? A defeated king, a swordless knight, a nothing." "Arthur," said Merlin gently, "just as there is more to a knight than his sword, there is far more to a king than his crown. Sooner or later, we must all face a defeat. Greatness lives in one who knows how to learn from victory or defeat and goes on to carry out his duty." Arthur smiled at Merlin for the first time in days. "That is what matters to me now," he said, "but I still need a sword in order to carry out my duty." "That is why we've come to this land," said Merlin. "There is a great sword not far from here, crafted by the fairy folk." Arthur quietly gazed at the landscape before them. Its unearthly beauty mystified him until he slowly realized that they had somehow crossed into the enchanted realm. "This is Avalon," said Merlin, "the domain of the Lady of the Lake. Deep within these waters rests her greatest possession, the noble sword Excalibur. She has long held it in safekeeping for the one who is meant to use it." As the mist shifted on the lake, a figure could be seen gliding over the surface. "Greetings, Sir King," called the Lady of the Lake softly. Arthur waded knee-deep into the water and bowed. "My lady, I've come to ask for your help. I have broken my sword and cannot fulfill my duty without one. I would that the noble sword Excalibur were mine." "Do you deserve it?" she asked calmly. "I cannot yet say, my lady, for I have only just opened my eyes," said Arthur. "But upon my honor as king, I shall dedicate my life to proving that I do." The Lady of the Lake gazed down at Arthur. "Then so it shall be," she said, and presented him with the sword scabbard. "May Excalibur be of service to you, that you may be of service to the world." She pointed to the center of the lake. There a golden blade rose above the water. "Return Excalibur to the lake when your life's work is done." A small boat appeared, sailing smoothly toward the shore. Arthur and Merlin stepped into it. Arthur took the sword and slid it into the scabbard. "Excalibur," he whispered, "may I be worthy of you." As they drifted to the shore, Merlin quietly observed the reverence with which Arthur handled Excalibur. The old man realized that somewhere over the waters of Avalon, the innocent lad from Wales had disappeared forever. In his place now sat an earnest young man, ready to serve his people with grace and dignity. "Which do you prefer, the sword or the scabbard?" asked Merlin. "The sword, of course," said Arthur. "It's magnificent." "The scabbard would be a wiser choice," Merlin advised him. "The sword will indeed slay any opponent, but the scabbard will protect you. As long as you wear it, you will never lose a drop of blood, no matter how wounded you are." "Then I shall never be without it," said Arthur. This comforted the old man, for he knew his time of watching over Arthur was nearing its end. "Let's go home, your majesty," said Merlin. When Arthur and Merlin returned to Caerleon, they were surprised by the sight of the king's men waiting to welcome them home. For all the knight's adventures, there was never a happier moment for any in that noble company than the morning King Arthur returned with Excalibur. As Arthur raised the great sword, he noticed a dark figure coming through the cheering assembly. The men grew silent and stepped back when they saw that Pellinore was in their midst. "Your Majesty, I have come to ask forgiveness," said Pellinore. "I did not know who you were, but now I do. Only a Pendragon could have such valor. I wish to join your company so that I too may champion your cause." Arthur dismounted and walked toward the kneeling king, then touched his shoulders with the point of Excalibur and said, "Rise, Sir Pellinore, and find your place among our fellowship. May your courage always be guided by your wisdom." So everything turned out well, and Arthur got a new sword and a new knight. I hope you enjoyed that story, and I hope to see you next time when we have another exciting tale on Storytime with Nonna. Bye!